हे गाइस, नमस्ते, अस्सलाम वालेकुम, वेलकम बैक टू माय चैनल इंडिया रिएक्ट 2.0। तो गाइस, आज फिर से हम हाजिर हैं आपके लिए एक मज़ेदार वीडियो लेकर के। इधर 2-3 दिन से एक इंटरव्यू वायरल हो रहा है पाकिस्तान के जो विदेश मंत्री हैं शाह महमूद कुरैशी जी का, और बहुत ही उनका इंटरव्यू वायरल हो रहा है। और किस तरह उन्होंने एक CNN न्यूज़ चैनल के एक एंकर हैं उनका बोलती बंद कर दिए हैं। तो आप ज़रूर इस वीडियो को अंत तक देखते रहिए, क्योंकि इस मज़ेदार इंटरव्यू में बहुत ही मज़ा आने वाला है। और ये इंटरव्यू हुआ था जो अभी वार हो रहा था इजराइल और फ़लस्तीन के बीच, उन्हीं के से रिलेटेड क्वेश्चन पूछा गया पूरा इंटरव्यू में। तो चलिए हम लेट नहीं करते, इस इंटरव्यू को देखते हैं। लेट्स स्टार्ट द वीडियो। रेडी 1 2 3 स्टार्ट।
I am convinced the tide is turning. I am convinced the pressure of public opinion is mounting, and ceasefire is inevitable. Israel is losing out. They're losing the media war despite their connections. They are losing the media war. The tide is turning.
What are their connections?
Deep pockets.
What does that mean?
Well, they're very influential people. I mean, they control media.
I would call that an anti-Semitic remark.
Well, you see, the point is they have a lot of influence and they get a lot of coverage. Now, what has balanced that is the citizen journalist who has been reporting, sharing video clips, and that has jolted people, and that has woken up people, and people who are sitting on the fence are today speaking up. Do you see how in different capitals of the world, in London, in Madrid, in Michigan, Chicago, every place from Sydney to the European capitals, people have come out and saying, put an end to this insanity. They're calling for an immediate ceasefire. Now, the Security Council has failed in forging a joint statement and coming out with a joint statement and forging a consensus. The General Assembly today is giving a clear message to the Security Council. It is your prime responsibility to ensure peace and security. Please live up to the UN Charter.
But, Mr. Ambassador, can we not separate the fact that there are calls for peace and for equal human rights for both sides, for Palestinians and for Israelis, without anti-Semitic talk and rhetoric? And we are seeing an increase in anti-Semitism throughout the world. Many of these protests are showing signs and images of anti-Semitism as well. Shouldn't you be condemning that?
I will not justify any rocket attacks, and I cannot justify and I cannot condone the aerial bombardment that is taking place.
But what about anti-Semitism? And what about Hamas's role in stopping the rockets?
I am saying, when you do not engage, when there are no negotiations, when there is occupation, when there's genocide, when there's war crime, when there's ethnic cleansing, then an extremist element takes advantage of that situation. Avoid it. How do you avoid it? You avoid it by pursuing a two-state solution, by adhering to the Security Council resolutions, respecting them, implementing them, fulfilling the promises that have been made and have been often broken. So, I believe that the answer is Israelis and Palestinians living side by side in peace, and it can only be done through a two-state solution, through negotiations, by cessation of hostilities, and ceasefire is the first step in that direction.
Does that include condemning anti-Semitism and condemning statements?
I am not justifying any of that.
You began this conversation. I am so sorry. There's so many things I want to talk to you about, but I personally am offended as a journalist. You began this conversation by saying that Israel, suggesting that Israel has, quote, close friends and powerful friends in the media. That is an anti-Semitic trope.
No, no. What I'm saying
इसे
is
बोलते हैं फुल तैयारी के
perception.
साथ इंटरव्यू
Look at the
देना.
perception the world has. You cannot ignore that, ma'am.
But that's a wrong perception.
Could be wrong, but that's the perception. Negate it.
Well, someone-
negate
but someone-
it. By giving a balanced coverage, negate it.
The onus is not on those who are being accused of things that aren't true. It's on people like you in powerful positions to say that that's wrong.
Well, what we are saying, what is wrong, and I'm not shying away from that. What I'm saying is, this insanity must come to an end. We must promote dialogue. We must sit and talk, and we must promote peace. Israelis and Palestinians, everybody has a right to live. They have a right to protect their children. Look at what's happening. 230 innocent people have been killed. More than 50,000 people have been displaced. You know, 50 schools have been bombed. Hospitals have been targeted. Red Cross has been targeted. The AP office, media outlets have been targeted. And what they're saying is, okay, if you think there was Hamas presence there, why don't you have an independent investigation?
Well, I believe that Israel did provide in some information and shared intelligence with the U.S. But let's go back to the other side, because there are obviously Israeli casualties as well. And I keep bringing this up because if you're going to be an honest broker, then you have to approach something like this objectively. And that doesn't seem to be the place where you're coming from.
Well, I am objective, and I would want to be objective. Loss of life, I will not condone. Every life, every human life is important to me.
And what about you can agree, we can agree that Palestinian lives and Israeli lives are equally important?
They're important, yes, they are.
So let me move on to another area, and that is the Uyghurs and the Muslim community there, and some 2 million Uyghurs. Many in the U.S. and many other countries around the world are calling their treatment genocide. And I'm wondering why we're not hearing the same from your government.
Well, my government has always spoken with frankness. You know, China is a very good friend of Pakistan. They've stood by us through thick and thin, and we have means of communication, and we use our diplomatic channels. We do not discuss everything in public.
But China being your friend aside, and I know China provides a lot of aid, you can't just turn a blind eye to human rights abuses in one country when we've spent... So is something being, are there discussions behind the scenes? Is your Prime Minister, Prime Minister Khan?
Ma'am, there's always a way of doing things, and we are not oblivious of our responsibilities.
So what needs to be done then? To the Uyghur community around the world that is listening to you spend a lot of time talking about human rights in Gaza, question about their same legitimacy to human rights as well.
Well, we have been advocating for human rights, whether they are in Gaza or in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Look at the atrocities that have been committed in Kashmir. Does the world talk about it? How many people have talked about it? You know, let's be fair. You know, let's have a fair assessment of how much coverage has that got.
Mr. Ambassador, I do want to turn to the pandemic, and we'll end.
I'm not ambassador.
I'm sorry, Mr. Foreign Minister. Let me turn to the pandemic and ask about the latest wave that we've seen in your country, in Pakistan. We've seen an increased number of cases there and deaths. What is being done? How alarming is that? And what does your country need to help in this fight?
Biana, to begin with, Pakistan has managed, under the leadership of Prime Minister Imran Khan, the first wave and the second wave reasonably well. We're in the midst of our third wave. Now, if we draw a comparison of the situation in Pakistan and next door, look at the situation on the, what our eastern neighbors facing. There's a huge difference. There are over 4,000 casualties on a daily basis.
There's no winner. I'm not pitting you against India. I'm saying that every loss of life is a tragedy.
Absolutely, it's a tragedy, and we are sympathetic, and we offered help. I offered help. We said, listen, these are human lives. We're in the same region. We are willing to help. They did not respond, but our offer still stands. What we are doing is, we are doing our best to bring the positivity down, and what we need right now is vaccine. We've been gifted vaccine by China. We have bought vaccine, but the vaccine that was promised to us through COVAX did not come in time. And what we need is inoculations to protect our people, the marginalized people, the paramedics, the doctors, the people who are on the front line. So that process is going on. The numbers are increasing, but we need help.
Mr. Foreign Minister, thank you so much for your time. I would just ask you personally to please avoid using anti-Semitic tropes that you used at the beginning of our conversation. I think they are very...
I have never been anti-Semitic and I never will be.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much.
तो गाइस, कैसा लगा आपको ये वीडियो? मज़ा आया? मज़ा तो आया होगा, क्योंकि जो मैडम साहिबा थी जो क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे थे शाह महमूद कुरैशी साहब से, तो वो अपने क्वेश्चन में खुद ही फंस रही थी। और सबसे मज़ेदार हमको ये लगा कि जितने भी उन्होंने क्वेश्चन पूछे और हर क्वेश्चन का जवाब कुरैशी साहब ने एकदम मतलब परफेक्ट, एकदम एक जो होता है एक्चुअल होना चाहिए क्वेश्चन का जवाब उन्होंने दिया। और फिर और बहुत सारे क्वेश्चन उनसे पूछा गया। उनसे पाकिस्तान के में जो कोविड के सिचुएशन के बारे में पूछा था, उन्होंने बताया कि हमारे जो इमरान साहब का सरकार है वो इसके ऊपर काम कर रहे हैं और वैक्सीनेशन का भी काम किया जा रहा है। फिर उनसे पूछा गया कि फिर हाँ, कुरैशी साहब बोलते हैं कि जो मीडिया है, जो इजराइल और फ़लस्तीन के बीच में जो वार हो रहा है, जो हमारी देश की या तो इजराइल की मीडिया है तो जो वर्ल्ड मीडिया है, वो एक सच्चाई नहीं दिखा रही है दुनिया को। तो उन्होंने अपने इंटरव्यू में मीडिया को भी लपेट लिया। और साथ में जब वो मैडम साहिबा जो क्वेश्चन पूछ रही थी, तो उन्होंने शाह महमूद कुरैशी जी को बोल दिया कि एम्बेसडर। उन्होंने तुरंत इस चीज़ को पकड़ा और तुरंत उन पर अटैक किया कि मैं एम्बेसडर नहीं हूँ, मैं हूँ जो विदेश मंत्री है। तो उन्होंने फिर बाद में जो एंकर थे उन्होंने सॉरी कहा। उसके बाद फिर इसी तरह हर सवाल का उन्होंने अच्छे से जवाब दिया। तो वीडियो अच्छा था, देख के मज़ा आया। और हम इसलिए इस वीडियो को पिक किए कि इधर 2-3 दिन से पूरा सोशल मीडिया पे इनका है ना ये दबंग स्टाइल इंटरव्यू वायरल हो रहा था। तो हमसे क्यों ना आपके साथ इस वीडियो को देखा जाए। तो आप बताइए आपको ये इंटरव्यू कैसा लगा, तो ज़रूर आप हमें नीचे कमेंट सेक्शन में बताइए। और चैनल पे न्यू है तो चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करके बेल दबाना नहीं भूलिएगा। और हो सके तो इस वीडियो को ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा शेयर कीजिएगा। और चलिए इस वीडियो को हम यहीं समाप्त करते हैं, मिलते हैं नेक्स्ट वीडियो में। तब तक के लिए बाय बाय।